August 6, 1945. A young Japanese engineer named Tsutomu Yamaguchi was getting ready to go home. He was 29 years old, and for the past 3 months he'd been away on a long business trip, designing an oil tanker for the Mitsubishi shipyard. Today was his last day. Tonight, he would finally board a train back to his wife and their newborn son. The city he was leaving was called Hiroshima. That morning he stepped off a streetcar and began the walk to the shipyard for one final shift. It was a clear summer day. The war news was grim, but here, in this moment, everything felt ordinary. He had no way of knowing he was walking into the single, most catastrophic morning in human history. As he crossed a potato field near the docks, he heard the low drone of an aircraft. He looked up and saw a single American bomber, high and small against the sky. And beneath it, drifting down slowly, was something attached to a tiny parachute. He watched it for a second, puzzled. Then the entire sky turned white. Yamaguchi later described it as the light of 1,000 suns, igniting all at once. Pure instinct took over. He threw himself to the ground and covered his head, and in that same instant, the shockwave arrived. It lifted his body off the earth, spun him through the air like a leaf, and hurled him into a nearby ditch. For a moment, everything went black. When he came to, the world had changed. The morning had turned to darkness. A vast column of fire and dust was climbing into the sky, and ash was already beginning to fall, black and soft, like snow. His hearing was gone in one ear. The skin on his left arm and the left side of his face was severely burned. But he was conscious. He was impossibly alive. He staggered to his feet and looked toward the city. Hiroshima was simply gone. Where minutes ago there had been streets, buildings, streetcars, and thousands of people going about their morning, there was now a flattened, burning plain. The bomb they would later call Little Boy had killed tens of thousands of people in a single heartbeat. Wounded and half-blind, Yamaguchi's first thought was survival, and his second was his colleagues. Somehow, in the chaos, he found 2 co-workers who had also lived through the blast. Together they picked their way through a nightmare, past the burned, the dying, and the dead, toward the company's air raid shelter. They spent that first night in the shelter, listening to the sounds of a broken city. In the morning, driven by one thought above all others, get home, they set out for the train station. Almost unbelievably, some trains were still running out of Hiroshima. Wrapped in bandages, in tremendous pain, Yamaguchi climbed aboard. The train carried him through the countryside, away from the ruined city, toward home. Toward his wife Hisako, and his infant son Katsutoshi. Toward the place where he lived and worked, a place he believed would be safe. That city, roughly 300 kilometers to the west, was called Nagasaki. He reached Nagasaki on August 8th and went straight to a hospital, where a doctor, an old classmate, dressed his burns. He was so heavily bandaged that even his own family barely recognized him. And yet, here is where the story becomes almost impossible to believe. The very next morning, August 9th, Yamaguchi got out of bed and went to work. He limped into the Mitsubishi office and began describing to his supervisor what he had witnessed. A single bomb, one flash, and an entire city erased. His boss listened, then told him he must have hit his head. It was impossible, he said. No single weapon could destroy a whole city. You're talking like a madman. And at that exact moment, as the word madman hung in the air, the office windows filled with the same blinding white light Yamaguchi had seen 3 days before. His body reacted before his mind could. He dropped to the floor a fraction of a second before the shockwave tore through the building. The blast ripped the office apart around him. Glass, timber, and debris flew in every direction. His fresh bandages were blown away and his burns were torn open again. But when the roar faded and he lifted his head, he realized the truth for the second time in 72 hours. He was standing at the epicenter of an atomic bomb, and he had survived it. His first desperate thought was his family. He clawed his way out of the wreckage and ran through the burning streets toward his home, certain they were gone. But by extraordinary chance, his wife and baby son had left the house to search for burn ointment and had taken shelter in a tunnel when the bomb fell. All three of them had lived. The days that followed were their own ordeal. Yamaguchi's hair fell out. He ran a raging fever, vomited endlessly, and his wounds turned black. This was radiation sickness, though the word meant nothing to anyone yet. For weeks he lay in a bomb shelter, wrapped in bandages, drifting in and out of consciousness. And slowly, against all odds, his body began to heal. To understand just how staggering Yamaguchi's survival was, you have to understand the weapons themselves. The bomb dropped on Hiroshima released the energy of roughly 15,000 tons of TNT in a single instant. At the point of detonation, the temperature briefly rivaled the surface of the sun. Anyone caught in the open near the center simply ceased to exist. Yamaguchi survived Hiroshima because of distance and luck. He was around 3 kilometers from the epicenter, far enough that the blast injured him rather than killing him outright. He then did the one thing that should have been safest. He fled the destroyed city and went home. He could not have known he was traveling toward the second bomb. The bomb that struck Nagasaki 3 days later was even more powerful than the first. And by sheer coincidence, Yamaguchi was again about 3 kilometers from where it detonated. The hills of Nagasaki and the walls of the office building shielded him from the worst of the blast. Twice, geography and chance conspired to keep him alive by the narrowest of margins. Think about the odds of that. To be present at the only 2 atomic bombings in the history of warfare, cities 300 kilometers apart, struck 3 days apart, and to walk away from both. Statisticians and historians have puzzled over it. It is, quite literally, a one-in-many-million story. And yet it happened to one ordinary engineer who just wanted to get home. Yamaguchi survived, but survival carried its own weight. Like many who lived through the bombings, the people Japan calls hibakusha, he spent years haunted by what he had seen and afraid of what the radiation might have done to his body and to his children. For most of his life, he kept his story to himself. It was too painful and, frankly, too unbelievable to tell. Thousands of people were caught near both cities in those days, but Yamaguchi's case was singular. In 2009, the Japanese government officially recognized him as a Niju Hibakusha, a double survivor, the only person formally certified to have lived through both Hiroshima and Nagasaki. One man, present at ground zero of both atomic bombings ever used in war. In his final years, he finally began to speak. He wrote about his experience, gave interviews, and even addressed the United Nations, pleading for the abolition of nuclear weapons. He argued that the only people who should ever be allowed to hold such power were those who had felt its fire on their own skin. He came to believe he had been spared for exactly this reason, to bear witness. Tsutomu Yamaguchi died in 2010 at the age of 93. A man who walked out of not one but 2 atomic explosions, raised a family, and lived nearly a full century. His life stands as a reminder that behind the staggering numbers in our history books, the tens of thousands lost in an instant, was a person with a family and a train to catch. And that sometimes survival itself is the most impossible story of all.